everyone, welcome to 80 Seconds to Catch Korean special interview. I invited Dr. DiMoia for further conversation related with the previous lecture and then his personal background about this. Okay, thanks again.
Thank you.
Presenting here. All right, let me start with a little bit easier questions about your experience comparing Singapore and Korea. You're also a professor at the SNU.
Sure.
So can you tell us a little bit about which will be the different one?
Sure. I think I'll talk very briefly both Singapore as a society, but also teaching. They're in many ways comparable societies in the sense that Singapore becomes independent in 1965, South Korea in 1948, and they have similar situations. Korea coming off the Korean War, Singapore started its nationhood in the Vietnam War. But nonetheless, many differences. Biggest differences, because Singapore is Southeast Asia, ethnically you get used to everyone around you being Malay, you hear Malay, Hokkien, Teochew, Cantonese, Mandarin, English, Bahasa. So
really.
The language mixes much more. Here I hear a little bit of Mandarin mixed in, but mostly Korean.
Right.
Teaching too. NUS has definitely, SNU has had international students since about 2008 here. NUS has been getting international students much more frequently since the 90s. So like here, I think Seoul Day is still figuring out how to handle and process, but they're used to mostly in Korean. NUS, we were used to, I got everybody in the world except for South America and Africa, but almost everywhere else I had Americans, Brits, people from all over Asia. So yeah, Singapore much more diverse. I guess the other big thing is the weather contrast. Singapore has no seasons.
Right.
It is green, it is meal.
Sultry.
Ships at like 24 to 30, 31, 32. So the best way to describe it is always hot, always sunny, and almost every day it will rain, then it will cool off, then it will get hot again.
Oh my God, yes.
So Korea, 4 seasons, very different.
Yeah,
very different.
Do you love Korea's 4 seasons?
Yes, I when I came back here in 2018, the first fall, that was my first fall since 2007 or 2008. I was like, oh my God, orange, blue, brown, fall leaves, fall weather. Singapore, the coldest day I experienced in 8 years was 24. That's extreme cold in Singapore. The students are wearing jackets.
Oh my God.
People are all going around like this.
Oh my God.
Yeah. That was the biggest difference.
Yeah, I think so. And as you mentioned, you were in Korea in 1995.
Yes,
right?
my first time.
Yeah, first time, and it's really rare case at that time because
I almost never saw other foreigners except for my job.
Right. So, can you also compare those days to 2020 Korea?
It's very different. I don't remember a lot, but I have a few pictures because So basic things. I lived in, believe it or not, an apartment near Kyodae-yok that was probably built in maybe Park Chung-hee Shide.
Wow.
So it was one of the old 6th floor, no elevator, charcoal. And now I understand that was probably the end of that building. And when I go back there, now it's high-rise condo. So I lived in an old 70s Park Chung-hee building. Nobody spoke English, even except if you went to a hotel. Even in bank, they only spoke Korean. So I was constantly saying, 한국말 잘 못해요. 한국말 잘 못해요. 이해할 수 없어요. So that was more of a daily struggle. What else do I remember really specifically? It was. I'll be honest. I mean, it was a lot more It was still Bali like today, but I think Koreans were more relaxed because.
Oh, really?
Now, I'll give you an example. I'd have to check the date, but somewhere in the spring of 1996 was when Korea hit the $10,000 income mark, and now, of course, it's much like 30, much higher.
Yes.
But Koreans are more stressed now.
Yes.
Then the 10,000, I remember everyone was like, "Oh, manse!" Everyone went out drinking and relaxing. Because we were close to Gangnam, we used to always go to Gangnam or around that area to have coffee or go drinking. I mean, not to say that Korea is not fun now, but it was, I think, a lot less stressful. And with success comes more responsibility. It felt like in the 90s there was much more casual and much more.
Yes, totally.
And YBM was a great place to work. I didn't realize that YBM was for Hagwon.
So how many years you you
Oh
taught
yeah,
English?
I actually only taught like UK law.
Okay.
No, but because then I went back to the U.S. for grad school.
Oh, I see. I see.
Yeah,
All right.
in fact, my boss was nice. I had a contract, and they
that's
were like
good.
they were like
That's
Changakum,
good.
okay,
Oh my
we
God.
understand education, we'll let you
Oh my
go,
God, that's
and they let me buy out my contract. Met Hyundai, like Weisowon, lots of Hyundai guys, Samsung guys, and then even weirder. Do you know the famous Korean singer from way back, Ha Chun-hwa?
What?
Do you know who she is?
Yeah, I know.
I taught her.
Oh my God.
I taught her English for 1 month in 1996.
She was in YBN
She was in my class.
class?
She was in my
Oh my God.
because the middle of the day classes were like housewife classes,
Oh my
and I didn't know who she
God.
was, but all the other students were like, "Oh my God, it's Hachunwa."
Oh, she's so hardworking student.
She
right?
was. Her name was Cecilia. She was in my class.
Oh my God.
And she
Even
never.
she got those sassy names.
She had a name. So I met lots of Koreans like that. One other example.
Oh,
I
I
don't
see.
remember the name, but I met a Korean female student who was in her early 20s. And she was on the 1992 Barcelona Korean female takgu team. And I didn't believe her. I mean, I was like, okay,
Oh my
show
God,
me.
you met so many
but
celebrities
she
in
took
those
me.
days.
She took me to a taku-chang.
Oh my
And she said, I
God.
no longer practice seriously. I used,
see.
and she defeated me 21-0 every time. And she's like, oh, I haven't practiced in 5 years. And I was like, okay, now I believe you. No, so
Alright.
YBM was a
Alright.
great place to work.
Oh
I got to
my
meet
God, that's-
college students, business people, housewives. I got a very interesting mix of society.
Oh my God, you got
Yeah.
really unique and special experience in the way.
I think it was I
so.
honestly think it was partly because it was Gangnam YBM. Maybe it was like the students used to dress up for class, and they
Right,
actually would wear. Even the college students,
right.
they would come to class and then they would go to Kode, Yonde, Seoulde, which I didn't know at that time. But they would be very serious, and they would be like, "I am." And also the other thing I remember too was. This is still true even now for Korea, but even then more. Every student was like, "I will make my own company. I will change the world." They were very, very confident. I often wonder. I often wonder
That's
now,
so-
20 years later, where they are.
So interesting, even more interesting than I expected.
No, I have
yes.
very good memories of YBM. They made us work
Yeah.
hard, but the staff and the students were really interesting people.
All right, I really appreciate your experience, your past experiences.
I always tell my undergrads it's 25 years later and I haven't left. So I mean, I left in between, but they definitely made me like, what is this place?
Do you think 2020's Korea is more multicultural, more opening, welcome to the other cultures or foreigners compared to 90s?
They're definitely more foreigners if you, in terms of numbers, absolutely. But I think in terms of the level of
Atmosphere.
success, maybe Koreans are a little more like, kind of like, I guess what I mean is now they expect foreigners to come because Korea is much more successful. I think in the 90s, Korea was successful, but they weren't mentally sure of that. Because I
Right.
remember people constantly asking
Right.
me, 한국은 못하냐고? Like, how do you think of it? Now Koreans are like, yeah, we're good. No, I understand. Like the confidence is there
Oh,
with
I see.
2002 World Cup,
Okay,
with
okay.
other things.
Yes,
The 2018 Olympics.
Yes.
But so 1990s, for lack of a better word, both are open, but 1990s was more innocent. Definitely, I know. Definitely, people would constantly come up to me on the street and go, "어느 나라 사람? 왜 한국에 왔냐고?" Whereas now people are like,
Okay.
"네, another foreigner."
Oh, okay. So,
It's not foreigners are not so surprising anymore. Yeah.
all right. So, your research area is really unique, but it's shed on light suddenly under
Okay,
this
sure.
current situation. So I'm really personally also I'm curious about what drew you to Korea for your studies.
Sure.
Yes, can you share?
Two things. One, my parents, my mother was a pediatrician, my father was a child psychiatrist, and they met in residency. So I grew up constantly being around medical talk.
Okay.
I even joke in the introduction to my book, and this is a true story, but my mother denies
Right.
it, that when we were children, you know how you're like, because I had a brother and two sisters, if you misbehave, your parents are like, you have to go to your room. Or, my parents didn't do that. My parents said, if you don't behave, we will talk about surgery. We will talk about how a baby comes out of the womb. We're like, no. So that's serious but joking, number one.
Oh my gosh.
Number two, though, is when I came back here. I came back here after YBM, the first time I came back, because I still thought about Korea, but I was in graduate school in the United States. So I came back for 2002 World Cup. And total accident, I wasn't planning it. I arrived the night of the Italia-Korea game in 2002.
Oh my gosh.
And when I got on the bus from Incheon, Korea was losing the game.
Oh my God.
So I arrived in Gangnam, and Korea scored to tie the game, and thousands of people were like, and I was like, I have to come back to this country. No, it's a true story.
Right,
and then I
yeah.
stayed that week in my friend's goshi. He let me sleep on his floor. And while he was studying, I would come down and go around. And that whole week, I was here. I arrived the night of the Italy game. I was here when they defeated Spain. And I left after they lost to the Germany in the round of 4. No, I mean, I'm joking, but I'm serious. But that whole week, it was about 8 or 9 days, I was like, I got to come back here. Then the other thing was more serious. That summer, also while I was here, I met some of my old Seoul Day friends and friends from YBM before, and then now Seoul Day friends. And one of them in particular, who is now a KAIST professor, but then just a graduate student, told me the stories about Migunjung and some of the things that happened at Seoul Day in the 40s. And I was like, I never knew that. Like, that's kind of interesting. So anyway, the combination of coming back and the feeling, and then just also getting interested in history based on my previous YBM experience. My original dissertation idea was about U.S. Hanmi, Hanil, U.S. American, but it was going to be all English, U.S. foreign policy after 1945. And then I was like, oh, I've been to Korea before, so I should go back. Now, I was stupid. I thought that 한국말 would be 아주 좋아요, which it was not. But in any case, I decided to think about it, and I came back 2004, and I stayed 04 through 06. I was a Sogang language student, and I sold a, what do they call me, because I was not official, 교환연구원.
Oh, okay.
And between the two of them, that 2002 experience became more serious, and I learned language and got interested in how did Koreans from 1945 create new institutions, specifically science institutions.
I see.
So it was accidental, but also now that I think about it, it makes sense.
Yeah, it kind of sounds like meant to be.
Yeah, it was a combination of personal and professional.
Yeah, it's so inspiring. Yes.
Well, I wouldn't recommend it to anyone else. It was my case. It happened.
All right. So, do you have any Korean historical figures that have given you inspiration in your field?
Lots of them.
Lots of them.
Sure. You want me to talk about an example?
Yes, just one or two.
Okay, sure. I'll give you one example. And I don't know if he's famous to Koreans, so I'll ask you. I'll explain. Choi Hyung-sup?
I'm afraid I haven't
Sure.
heard.
That's what I expected. That's what I expected. But Choi Hyung-sup is Park Chung-hee's science guy. He is one of the first, or maybe even the first, head of most 과학기술 Ministry of Science and Technology. He was head of the Wancherok Yongoso. In every picture of the 1960s where it's a scientific invention or a KIST or something in the background, Park Chung-hee is here. The guy sitting back here is usually Choi Hyung-sup. He's a really, somebody should write, like, not me, because I'm doing other things, but somebody should write like a 500 to 600 page book on Choi Hyung-sup and put it this way, as a best example, if the story of the Korean economy recovering in the post-war is part of the story of scientific transformation is probably Choi Hyung-sup, and for whatever reason, that's just not yet. I'm amazed even that there's not at least some small book about him. All Kiso people know who he is, but regular Koreans are like, who? The reason they give you the story, I have a friend who is a Korean professor now at Seoul City University. He's named Choi Hyung-sup, and his father named him specifically after the first Choi Hyung-sup. And other Koreans are like, okay, I don't know who that is. And he's always like, no, you should know. So I'm stealing his story, but it's a true story.
Oh, I see.
No, that's one example. Plenty of others. Let me think of one other. I'm blanking on his name.
It's okay. It's
okay. Yeah. But lots. No, I'll give you one more. It's kind of interesting, funny.
Sure. Yep.
But I'll give you the background. You, of course, probably this one you will know. Korean politician, Ban Ki-moon.
Oh, of course.
Okay.
Yes.
Do you know where Ban Ki-moon grew up?
Chungbuk. As far as I know, that area.
Yeah, in like Chungju. And do you know why he's English, or so he claims it's good? Do you know the story?
I don't know, just he's really hardworking.
That's part of it, but there's a story that it connects to Hangul Kwak-Kisul. Yes. So Ban Ki-moon grew up in Chungju area in the probably second half of the 1950s after the Korean War. He's a little kid. They're then developing in that area what becomes the Chungju Gongcheong, Bilryu Gongcheong, the Chungju fertilizer factory.
Okay.
Which was a big post-Korean War because all the fertilizer was in the north, so we need our own fertilizer. So there were lots of international exports around. So he told a story once in an interview where he said, oh, when I was a little kid, I learned English by hanging out and talking to reporters and international people. And then when I did a little research, I was like, I think he's telling the truth. No, I mean, like Chungju was a very unusual area at that time where there were lots of development specialists, especially...
I didn't know that.
Exactly. There's no reason, because to be honest with you, the Chungju fertilizer factory was not so successful. but under Lee Sung-man, it was a huge plant, and they were always doing films, and there were always lots of foreigners there, especially Americans. So, I mean, it's not strictly a Kwok. He's a person. He's a politician. But he's another perfect example of he grew up almost, he learned English accidentally because of the internationalization of Korea.
Interesting.
Yeah. Well, I didn't, when he first interviewed and he said that, I was like, what's he talking about? That's countryside. But then I did some research and I was like, no, I think he's right.
Oh my God! Thank you for such an interesting story, which has been hidden for Koreans.
This is why I like going to these weird little Korean places in the countryside.
So this will be last question for you. So as we all were aware of the coronavirus now, so you've been here more than many times, and you can compare those days. And how do you expect the Korean society can cope with this current disaster? Do you think any idea how it will be like in 1 year later, or just a process we're dealing with?
I do think, I'll actually give you, not an official answer, but an unofficial, even because I talk to lots of epidemiologists and people, and they say things like, from the beginning, February 2020, to total 100% safety is 2.5, 3 years. So I do think that by sometime next year, like sometime in 2021, where it's been 1.5, 2 years, that the virus will be still here, but in fewer numbers. Enough people have been infected that it's not a huge problem. Exactly. And also what makes me just guess that is the experience of prior crises. The example in Europe and the US everyone's talking about is 1918. Korea has gone through similar situations with other diseases post-Korean War. I think the bigger thing that'll be more interesting to historians, of course, I don't know, to other people, but will be if people remember it. Like, will we go back to normal, or will we still be like cautious?
I see.
Because it's weird how quickly you can go back to normal, and I'm hoping we remember some of this so that we're ready for the next thing to happen. But no, I am optimistic that by some point next year, we'll at least be getting more, less social distancing, a little more common. I think the thing we will, and this is useful, I think we will keep, will be like, and I've seen this perfect example. My apartment is on Seoul campus, and of course Koreans are familiar with online and delivery, but before it was, a certain percentage. Now because of the virus, I can leave the house in the morning and coupang is there. I can come home at night and coupang is there. I can leave on Saturday and there are packages in the stairway. I do think this part of Korean life, I think coupang should, if I were their CEO, I'd be like, okay, like you need to keep doing this. They must be doing really good business, is just my guess. No, things like that. Banking online, shopping online, I think will become even more common than it was in the past. And given that Koreans are technically comfortable and already have some of these businesses set up, I think these things will, if they're smart, they will position themselves and do even more of it. But no, I think the most important thing from a lot of us, we'll be able to travel again. I think so. And can you meet friends and be normal and human again? I think that will happen.
Without mask, please.
Yeah, exactly. In my case, I've even told my students, I like teaching online, but I have not taught a face-to-face class in a year. I hope sometime next year to teach again face-to-face. I miss it.
Yeah, we all miss face-to-face. We really want to live in real life.
Exactly. And I think it will happen. I think it's going to take some time.
Okay. All right. Thanks to your lecture and then your insightful answers, we can really wish, we really hope to be real life in near future.
Sure.
All right. I really appreciate your time and efforts for all of this.
Thank you very much.
All right.
Thank you.